Welcome, game dev adventurers, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour. Today we're talking about chasing the magic on your game development team with a community-focused episode.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
In our live magical podcast, we give game developers the chance to hear stories of breaking in from industry experts, as well as directly ask them questions about their areas of expertise in the second half of each episode. Today, we're doing what we call a community episode, which we do every 1 or 2 months, which basically means we're highlighting community members rather than just one guest. So we're going to have a couple people that we learn from today. As always, I'm your host, Willem Delventhal, the headmaster here at the Indie Game Academy. And as always, this is a podcast that we host live in our Discord Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So feel free to swing by and join us for the next one. Now, I as always, am your host, and this is, like I said, a community-based episode, which means the formula is a tiny bit different. This is where we bring a topic to the community and get their thoughts on said topic together, rather than just hearing from a single person. And my topic for today is one that I'm curious if y'all will also find as interesting as I do. I have started to have a suspicion that projects that become awesome, that games that become awesome, have a certain magic, a certain sparkle that you can sense on the team before they ever go live. And you can also often sense that that magic or that sparkle is missing on a project. I know that I have worked on a couple of projects that both have that magic and a couple of projects that definitely don't have that magic. So what I would like to explore today is how you know if your project has the magic, how you know if it's missing, and then how we can build that magic over time. We're going to be going through 3 different sort of questions bit by bit as we go through the episode. The first is just, what is this magic? Let's quantify it. What actually are the pieces that make something magical? Second, we're going to talk about how you know if your team has the magic. And then third, we're going to talk about what are some steps potentially that we can take to grow the magic on our own game development teams. So I'm going to put forward my first postulation, and then I'm going to bring up Rick Williams, the founder of Landline Games, to give his perspective on what the magic actually is. I believe the magic comes in a couple of different parts. If we're starting with this first question, what is the magic? I believe that it is sort of a combination of, number one, I believe this is probably first and foremost, just the excitement and enthusiasm of the team. I think when the team is just straight up excited, and this doesn't necessarily mean that they're excited about the idea, it also means that they're excited about the prospect of working on the game. They're just excited about like being on a project. They're probably excited about being together. Maybe they really enjoy being with each other. Maybe these are good friends. Yes, the honeymoon phase, says Alec in the comments. And I believe that enthusiasm, just straight up like, I am excited, is the first and probably most important part of the magic. I believe that excitement translates to games in the end. For instance, if anybody has listened to any of the talks or researched how Baldur's Gate 3 got made by Larian Studios, you'll see that all of those developers were so pumped to be working on this game, and they were just having a good time with their buddies while they did it. We've also seen some examples of this in the past. One of the examples I love bringing up is Doom, and how the original Doom got made by John Romero and John Carmack, and how they built the thing in a blacked out office with demon iconography all over the walls and blasting death metal music. You know, that is some magic. That is just enthusiasm or excitement. So I would put forward that the excitement and enthusiasm is the first part of what makes the magic. I'm going to now bring up Rick on stage to add to that. Rick is already in the comments suggesting that momentum is the part of the magic. Rick, welcome to the stage. How you doing today?
Hey, Will, thanks for having me. I'm doing good.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Now, before we talk a little bit more about magic, give me the micro version of your origin story so the good listeners get a little bit of that.
So the micro version is I am a quarter-life crisis career convert from the construction industry into game development. I was a hobbyist forever, and I self-taught and eventually picked up work becoming a full-time contractor, and I've also released independent titles.
Heck yeah, awesome. Yeah, so Rick is a career transitioner for those who are considering it. You can do it. It's real. Also, to call it out, Misha, I love your comment there. Misha just put forward an acronym for MAGIC, where MAGIC stands for mechanics and momentum, active engagement, growth and genre, insight and imagination, coordination, and clear goals. Maybe we'll talk about that. Rick, what is MAGIC?
Magic. So when it comes to the magic of a project, you can find this in game jams or in longer term projects. Usually game jams will become a longer term project. It is
Mm-hmm.
when people come together and, there is that base level of excitement and enthusiasm. Yes, I'd like to work together. Yes, this sounds like a cool project. But a key ingredient is having a clear vision for what that project is going to look like. So it's
Mm-hmm.
one thing to say, oh, yeah, let's build this wonderful game about this concept. But if people can't see what that experience looks like, what is that user journey? What is the theme that you're trying to use to paint every aspect of development? Then you have a hard time actually getting started and building momentum. You
Mm.
definitely need to have at minimum one person who has a very strong idea of what the game experience is going to be, who can communicate it to the rest of the team. And if they can get everybody to believe in the project to the point that they start ideating how they can build into it and get the creative juices flowing, then at that point you
Mm.
start to feel that momentum and everybody's excited about the project. And at that point, because people are excited about it, they do their best work and you get really awesome products.
Yeah, I love that. It's really interesting. I think the term momentum is maybe one of the really strong ones here, where you'll sort of notice when there's a couple of stages of building out any project, and the first stage is putting together the team. And often on those bigger projects, especially if you do a jam and then it expands into something that's a bigger project, a full-time release, you'll have stages of team building where you get sort of those core team members, and then you add a couple more, and you add a couple more, and you add a couple more. And what often happens is in that very beginning step where you just have a couple of people, the game is not very well defined yet. Usually there's some kind of core idea, like we're going to make, X, Y, and Z. And people are like, oh, yeah, that sounds cool. And then it slowly crystallizes over time as more people give perspective and as more thought and experimentation is done. And I think momentum builds over time as a result. People get a clearer and clearer vision of what they're making, and hopefully, in an ideal world, are getting more and more excited about this core vision, and therefore momentum is building over time, and people are getting, more and more ready to make this thing awesome.
You want to hack about getting momentum going on things like a game jam?
Yeah, tell me.
Join the game jam with at least one other person who you already know you have good working chemistry with. And then because you're able to bounce off the chemistry with that person, other people start to just fall in and follow with you because you're like, okay, I can feel the momentum. And then that sets the precedent that this is going to be a functional team.
Okay, so that suggests that a part of the magic, how we make a team that's going to build an incredible game, is team chemistry. Do you think that that's correct?
Yeah, 100%. If you have people who are constantly at odds with each other or you have conflicting visions and you can't reconcile them, then you end up in that situation where people are building different things and you have an adversarial relationship with your co-developers, and then just people don't enjoy that.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. One of the things that is really wonderful about running the Indie Game Academy is that I get to it's almost like, I'm going to say this and it's going to sound a little bit bad, but I say it with all the love. I love you all. It's almost like my little test box for like seeing how game studios function and experimenting with how to get studios functioning well. And we've, as a result, seen teams that have struggled a little bit more and teams that have really thrived a little bit more. And one of the things that seems universally true is that when those teams like are just pumped to be together, independent of anything else, they make better games. One of our winners from one of the cohorts, the creators of Hyper Bimbo Beats, which was one of the House Rogue teams, I think 2 cohorts ago, were just having a freaking awesome time. And it was evident and clear from the very beginning that they were just having a freaking awesome time and that they really enjoyed working together. And that enjoyment, that enthusiasm translated to the end product. And in their cohort, they were named by the publishers on Pitch Night the most viable game as well. So it clearly had, some effect on that final product.
Yeah, I definitely think that when you are working with somebody who you have that creative chemistry with, if you share the enthusiasm for the core concept and the premise, and then even if nobody even if your team doesn't have a clear idea of what you're building initially, as long as that can be communicated, once it starts taking shape, people really like to iterate on what you have, and then at that point the chemistry can fire up, and you start to just have fun experimenting and seeing it come together.
I completely agree with that. Okay, so I would postulate that another part of the magic. So far we have enthusiasm and momentum, clear vision, and team chemistry. I would postulate that another part of the magic, how you know a game is going to be wonderful, is morale, and that's similar to enthusiasm and momentum, but I feel like it is distinct. What is your take on how morale plays into a game dev team?
Morale is people seeing their contributions reflected in the project. So if somebody's making art, you get that art into the project and they see the character that they made walking around and they feel like jazzed because this is what I made and here it is, a part of the experience. This also falls into ideas where you have an idea that you said, "Oh, this is what the current game is. Wouldn't it be cool if we implemented this idea?" And you might be the sound designer, but you thought, "Oh, why don't we add um, you know, the ability for this character to sprint or give the mech shields, right? Something like that." And then because they can't implement everything on their own, but the team takes their input seriously, then you say, "Hey, this is like actually really cool." A key aspect of incorporating people's ideas though is running it through the filter, like having a clear idea and somebody who will protect the theme of the game. I know you've been reading through um, the Art of Game Design by Jesse Shell,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll remember in there's the lens of the theme where you have to understand what is the theme of the game that you're bringing. So obviously you can't bring in every single idea that comes up, but if you do pass it through that filter of that's a cool idea, and you know what, it's really on theme, and you can just tell everybody, hey, like this is something that's going to boost the theme up. Then you start to stack on top of it, and you start to get a very clear idea as you converge on the experience that delivers on the theme of the game.
Yeah, interesting. I agree. Like part of morale is making people feel valued and having them see their contributions reflected in the final project. This, by the way, is one of the reasons that I am such a staunch supporter of indie games. Because once you get really big, sometimes your direct work, obviously, generally anyway, makes it into the game. Even that might not be true sometimes. But most of the time, your ideas and suggestions are not nearly as powerful as they are on an indie team when you're working on those larger teams. Being on an indie team, yeah, exactly. On an indie team, it's a smaller group, and therefore, naturally, you just have a bigger percentage of sway on the project, which is something that I love. The internet, Google, defines morale as confidence, enthusiasm, and discipline of a person or group at a particular time. And obviously, we've talked about enthusiasm already, but I think the part of morale that we haven't touched on is confidence. I do think that the magic, the sparkle of a project that lets you know that this game might well be something special is just straight up confidence, and is building the team into one that believes this game is going to be special and awesome. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that starts with the internal development team playing the game and thinking, "Oh, this is cool. We're delivering on what we wanted to build." The next step is showing other people through screen shares, just like, "Hey, this is what we're building. What do you think?" And they see it and they're like, "Oh yeah, I love it." Then you actually put it in other players' hands, and once they start responding to the gameplay, when they weren't on the development team, but they are experiencing it and they are having the right emotions invoked by the experience, then you're just you're onto something when people outside of your team are enjoying the experience you're building.
Yeah, I think something I want to add to that, that's totally true. I want to add to that, though, that you often don't even need gameplay to start to build the confidence. Think about it maybe like you're pitching to a publisher. Like what is it that gets a publisher to believe in your game? Those same tactics are what gets your team to believe in the game as well. So if you're about to build an RPG and you manage to find somebody who worked on, freaking Skyrim, or I don't know, worked on just some RPG, some well-known RPG, and you're able to say, without sounding too conceited or anything, look at this cool person we just added to the team. They have this awesome experience. Even if the game is not even close to playable yet, or even on paper yet, that alone is a little bit of confidence building for your team. And there's more you can do that starts to build that belief, like, oh my God, I think we're going to do it. I think that is a part of what gets the magic as well. Just the straight up, like, we're the right people, we can do it, we kick ass.
I think I would add the one addendum to that. Getting somebody on the team whose reputation precedes them is good, but you also need to have that initial demonstration that you're actually going to work together well. Once you get that sense that, that first interaction where you're just like, oh, I actually have chemistry with this person, their working style is working, we can actually feel the momentum increasing because this person has been brought onto the team. That's the moment that confidence really sets in.
Yeah, totally agree. I don't use the Skyrim example to say go try to find people who've worked on AAA games for your game jam. That was maybe a poor example. I more mean bringing people on who help build the confidence in their ability set. So, being able to say, like, imagine you're putting together a team. You've got a little Discord or a little chat or something between the team members who are already selected. And you've identified that your team is a little bit weak organizationally, and then you bring on somebody and you're like, this person is an awesome project manager. They've done some other cool work in the past. They're going to help us get more organized. That's the kind of example that is totally doable on your team, is going to make everybody feel more confident because they go, okay, yes, a weakness that I believe in is now being addressed. Hopefully it's just a cool person who vibes with you and that you enjoy working with.
That also represents a confidence in the team leadership and management, because it's that feedback cycle where you've expressed a concern that, hey, this is something that is a liability in the development of this project, and you feel heard, and then you say, okay, we are actively going to acknowledge that this is a liability, and we're going to do something to try to limit that liability.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great point. Confidence in leadership is huge, and confidence in leadership basically needs to be earned. There's no workaround. Just placing somebody in an org chart and going, yeah, this person is your manager, does not create confidence in leadership. What creates confidence in leadership is exactly that, is being able to go to the leader and say, hey, I have this cool idea. And then you see that cool idea respected, even if it doesn't work its way into the game, which often happens, and that's okay. Seeing the idea at least respected, listened to, or going to the leadership and saying, hey, we're like super not organized, and having the leadership go, okay, cool, we're going to go find a project manager. I hear you. That kind of thing is what builds the confidence in leadership. And I think that kind of thing ultimately creates magic on the team, because suddenly I go, I can trust and respect my leader. One of the big ones for the leaders out there is just being able to be told that you are wrong, or that something was weak, or that something needs work, and hearing that gracefully and then being able to action upon it is a huge part of what will help you become a trusted leader.
That's wisdom and humility, and the acknowledgement that you are not at the end of your journey yet.
Nobody is, ever. Doesn't matter who you are. We already have a bunch of comment question, which is fantastic. So we're going to have a little bit of a discussion here before we bring on our next community guest. I'm going to call out Lewis's question first. Do either of you have tips for trying to get a project back on track if and when the core game idea begins getting lost? So if we're losing the magic, how do we pull it back?
Momentum. You have to set a very small goal to move towards that you believe is in the right direction to achieve that core concept. Like make it super small. You'll hear a lot of motivational speakers talking about the person who can't clean their room, but maybe the first thing you're going to do is organize your sock drawer, and that's it. Right? It's the same concept where you start very small and build your team's sense of self-efficacy that they can get on the right track by doing something small correctly first, then something a little bit bigger, then a little bit bigger. Like, address that one issue you guys know is a problem, and like just focus on that. You don't have to holistically deal with the whole experience. Just fix that one mechanic, and then move to the next one, and move to the next one. Build that momentum that you are actively fixing what's going on.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So if we're talking momentum and confidence, that's how you build momentum and confidence. So you've lost the momentum, you've lost the magic. The team is feeling like, I don't know if this is going to go anywhere. One, take action. That's one of the big ones. As soon as you start noticing this, it almost never, 95% of the way, 90%, 95% of the time, just goes away. It almost never just solves itself. Like basically never. Just assume that it won't. Instead, make sure you are actually taking action, whether you are a leader, especially if you're a leader, or just a team member. And when you do take that action, I love this point, Rick, of these tiny stepping stones, because that's exactly what momentum is. Momentum is a measure of movement speed over time, right? And the way that you get higher momentum is the thing starts to speed up over time. That means that at the beginning, it's not moving that fast. It doesn't need to be a giant step to get the momentum back. It can be a small step. Hey, look, we shipped that thing that we talked about for 6 months and never actually got to. Hey, look, we added this feature. Hey, look, we addressed this bug. Each one of those little steps you take increases the momentum, builds trust in the team, starts to get the magic back.
Yeah, I want to take a slightly different angle on that same question too, because it's also about the core ideas getting lost. Because maybe you do have a good amount of momentum, but ultimately what you're ending up with just doesn't feel right. Like, oh, the idea is lost. Like we've got this slapdash collection of mechanics, but like it doesn't make sense. This is where you go back to that lens of theme, where you say like, okay, have we just been adding things because people had the ideas and we're just going in like 6 different directions? Like figure out what that theme is, set your North Star and say like, okay, like what is the actual North Star we want to head towards? And like make sure that all of your changes going forward are in line for that. And if you have anything that you have added that like really just goes completely off the wall and doesn't make any sense, like it might be the best solution to trim those things out of the game and focus on the experience you want to deliver rather than ideas that were just cool but didn't make sense in the context of the project.
Yeah, ideas that are just cool are actually one of the surest things to sink your game, unfortunately. You do want to live in the land of like, I'm just having fun. I think that's really important. But like you're suggesting, Rick, there needs to be sort of like a template or direction that we are using to filter what fun ideas we are actually focusing on. Because one, if nothing else, you're just going to blow up your scope and then not get to everything you want to get to. And then people are going to be fatigued and tired and burnt out, and it'll kill their morale and their momentum. But the other thing that I want to say here is in my own personal journey, in my own personal experience, I've been focusing really hard on design leadership and how to properly lead the design of a game. And I have done all kinds of research and talked with smart people. And one of my favorite takes for this specific thing that we're talking about is from Will Shen, who came on our podcast a couple of episodes ago. He's the guy who wrote You're Finally Awake in Skyrim. Great episode. Go listen to him. Very cool guy. And he talks about basically leading a design team and how you get the creative vision to stay consistent for your game. And his advice is really simple. It's more or less gameplay pillars, although it's a little bit more expansive. His take is that before any game project gets started, you agree on a couple of the emotional and metric objectives, as well as those gameplay pillars. So what specifically are we trying to get the player to feel? What specifically is the visual theme of this game? What specifically what specific gameplay moments or player experiences are we trying to get for the player? So if we want the player to have a moment where they cry, that's an important one to decide on before you ever start ideation. And once you have agreed upon those as a team, which that alone can take some effort, you now have an extremely powerful tool to say yes or no to other ideas. So if somebody comes in and goes, I really want to add this like super cutesy character who like gives you a hug, but the theme is a dark, depressing universe, you can just say, well, that doesn't match the theme. That's not what we're actually aiming for. And that's something, if you've all agreed upon, that we can then all use to filter all of those wonderful ideas.
Yeah, I like to have my core systems that I define all pointed at the North Star, and then those rule of cool ideas where it's like, oh, this would be a really neat idea to add. You have to determine if that is a subsystem that supports one of the core systems. If that cool idea pushes that core system further so that it better pushes to the theme, then that's a effective addition.
I like that a lot. Sweet. I'm going to do one more question with you here, Rick. And I'm going to call out Isaac's question because I think it's a good one. Isaac asks, going off of previous advice for completing a game in about 6 months max, to throw back for anyone who hasn't heard this before, at IGA, we recommend that when you're working on those projects that are specifically for skill building, where you're trying to learn and trying to get a game out there for your portfolio, you don't spend longer than 6 months. The longer you spend, the more you're competing with the big companies, and mostly you won't beat the big companies. So don't spend longer than 6 months. So going on the previous advice of 6 months, should this still be done with a game full of this magic that still needs work? I think it's what should be done with a game that might have some magic, but it still needs work. If you're at the 6 month mark, what do we do, Rick?
So, so when it comes to the 6 month project, if it was for a learning experience, like it is important to cut it off. But what you should really use as your filter is the game loop tightly knit and tied up. Like
Mhm.
that's the thing. If you're going to spend that long working on a project that is a portfolio piece and a learning experience, it is a good idea to button it up so that you feel good about the end result and it's a complete experience in its encapsulation.
Mhm.
You can decide if you want to keep going from there, but a lot of times that is a very serious consideration because it's like we say, games are never finished; they're just abandoned. So you have to come to that decision. Like at a point, you do need to stop and cut yourself off. But as you're approaching that 6 month mark, like look at it at the 5 month mark and say like, okay, we need to close this experience off and make a solid bugless complete experience.
Hmm. Yeah, I think this comes down to the business objectives of the game. If the objective of the game is just to learn, if the objective of the game is to have a portfolio piece, then I would prioritize cutting it off. Because frankly, this is that Jesse Shell quote I use all the time. Your first 10 games are gonna suck. Games are incredibly complicated and are one of the densest art forms that exist. So you're just not going to get it right. Nobody ever gets it right. Nobody ever releases a game and is like, "Yep, that's 110% of what I wanted it to be." That's super normal. So being able to cut it off and not worry too much about leaving a game just pretty good and not incredible is okay and good and an important skill to practice. That said, I think it is worth considering two things. The first thing is if you've been working on the game for 6 months and you've known for 6 months that it doesn't really have the magic, then it probably won't ever have the magic. And then that's even a better reason just to be like, all right, we're releasing it. It's fine. Whatever. I'm moving on to the next one. 6 months is, not the longest time, but it's long enough that if you're really struggling to get the magic in, it probably just won't happen. And then the second thing I'll say is if you come to that 6 month mark and you're like, man, it's so close, I can see the sparkle, like truly. And this is easy for us to feel even when it's not real. So be cautious about that. But if you truly feel like, man, the sparkle is just almost there, then sometimes it is okay to push deadlines. We've seen it. Miyamoto loves pushing his deadlines, right? But it's just dangerous to push deadlines. There's so many indies out there who said they'd work on something for 6 years and they spent for 6 months and then they spent 4 years on it. So just make sure when you do push a deadline, if you truly are, if the magic is right there, right around the corner, just set another date first of all, and then don't push it again after that. If you give yourself another 3 months and you still don't get the magic, then you're done.
I think with the best concepts, you feel the magic by the 2 week mark. Like as soon
Yeah.
as you get that initial mechanical prototype in, this is why they talk about prototyping the ideas. Like don't build your whole game framework. Like test the idea that you think will be the part that contains the magic, and if it
Hmm.
if it contains it, you'll feel it right away.
Yeah,
But also,
I totally agree. Mm, Keep going.
I don't. I just wanted to do a thing really quick. If you're working on a 6 month project, as a skill building thing, and this is slightly aside, but
It's okay.
finishing up the project and buttoning up the experience is a skill that you should work into a 6 month timeline. Like that's something that a lot of people don't get to practice with development. So like making
Mhm.
sure that you have that buttoned up is like practice just buttoning up projects rather than leaving them
Yep.
open ended.
Yeah.
Finish the
The
thought about yeah.
No, that's great. The chance of finding magic at 6 months, if it doesn't already have magic, is pretty low. The chance of you getting the skill, of getting practice with the skill, of actually releasing games, which so many junior developers frankly don't have, is worth a lot. So maybe just do that. Yeah, and I agree. You'll feel the magic, or at least you'll feel a couple of sparkles pretty early on. You'll be like, this might have magic. And you'll get that like, yeah, 2, 3, 4 weeks in. And so, yeah, if you're at 5 or 6 months and you're finally starting to go like, oh, maybe this has magic, probably the ship has sailed, unfortunately.
Yeah, the projects
all
that
right.
have magic are the ones that like that were your one weekend game jam that you really enjoy going back to?
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're doing another Mega Jam as the Indie Game Academy, which is where we build a team that's double A size so everybody can get experience working on a big team. And we are actually rebuilding this time around a prototype that I made 10 years ago. It was my first actual scripted prototype. And I've always felt like there was magic in that little baby game. 10 years from now. 10 years I've felt that. All right. Rick, I'm going to leave you on stage because at some point I'm going to ask you for more thoughts on some of the questions. But we're going to call up here RJ. How you doing today, RJ?
I'm doing well. Yeah, and thank you very much for inviting me on such short notice.
Yeah. We're lucky we could get you. You know, we've been trying for a long time. All right. Definitely.
Well, thank you for that.
Of course, yes. So, RJ, before we actually get into the magic, I would love to get that micro version of your origin story. Tell us who you are and how you got to where you are today.
All right. Okay. Well, so once again, thanks, Willem, and thanks everybody for listening. Yeah, my name is RJ. Before I continue, I just have to apologize. I'm on a computer that doesn't have a webcam, so you just have to stare at this photo of me with Cooking Mama. But anyway, so about me. I've been working in the games industry since 2004. I started my career working as a QA tester for THQ, which doesn't exist anymore, and then after that, 2K Games. Since 2008, I've been a producer of one type or another. I spent many years working for indies, multiple different indies, both in the U.S., Canada, and even I even tried running my own indie studio out of Santiago, Chile. But unfortunately, that studio doesn't exist anymore. More recently, or I guess you can say post-pandemic, I got back into AAA. So I've been working in the AAA for the past several years. The last release project I worked on was Lego Fortnite. I was an art producer for an outsourced studio that worked on Lego Fortnite. And then the last thing I'll mention, and this ties into why I'm so impressed and why I'm very thankful that I'm being brought on as like a community guest here at your academy. For the past several years, I've been a video game educator. So I've taught as an adjunct professor at a local at Bloomfield. I'm in New Jersey, so Bloomfield College in New Jersey. I've been an adjunct professor there. And last thing I'll say is I'm currently an advisor at the NYU Game Center incubator. So anyway, thank you again for bringing me on.
Heck yeah, so cool. That's awesome. Love to hear about that background, and I love to run into a fellow game dev educator. Hi, nice to meet you, RJ.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Heck yeah. All right. So, RJ, in the comments before we started the episode, you mentioned that you have an example of a project where there was no magic. And that is a really actually valuable experience for us to hear about. So I would love for us to get that intro from you. What is this project that didn't have any magic, and what was it like? How did you know?
All right, so I'm gonna. I try to be upbeat, so I'm gonna do my best not to be like the Debbie Downer here, because I'm approaching this from like the cautionary tale standpoint. So
Yeah.
I worked, and just so everybody knows, I don't want to get into any trouble, so I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to give any specifics, but just generally speaking, and being as vague but useful as I can be. So I worked on a project that actually went on for. When I was there, it went on. I worked on this project for a couple of years, but the project, even before I had joined, had been going on for several years. So we're talking about a 4, 5, probably even longer than 5-year project. And even by the point that I joined, and again, this was like a years-long project by the time that I became part of it, that magic just wasn't there. And I'm going to build upon like something that Willem, both you and Rick said, like you were identifying like the key components of the magic, like enthusiasm from the team, momentum, a clear, cohesive vision, and then overall like team morale. We had none of that. So, but what I find fascinating though is, and so something that I hope I can add to this is, like this team, if you looked at the team as individuals, they were individually phenomenal. Maybe not me, I don't think I'm phenomenal, but everybody else on the team was fantastic as individual contributors. Like there were a whole lot of experience, a lot of passion, a lot of talent across the board, from programming to art to design. Like if you looked at each individual person on the team, like very impressive backgrounds for everybody. as individual contributors, very impressive. But as a team, like working together, we'd never built anything together. So looking at this from the team perspective, we were, I don't know if quote unquote immature is the right phrase, but or like untested. We were unproven. And as a team, even though we had individually all this talent, all this passion, all this ability, as a team, we weren't able to get anything done. And again, I don't want to be a downer. I don't want to lay any blame, but without naming any names, I think that a key component of that, the reason why we weren't able to, unfortunately, this project got canceled. It never saw the light of day. Like I said, we lacked everything that you, Willem, and Rick were talking about. But I'll hone in on we did not have a clear, cohesive vision. And I think it was Rick who said this. You need ideally one person who's like the owner of the I don't want to say evangelist, but the champion, I should say. So the champion of the theme, the champion of the core game, the champion of the core game experience itself. We didn't really have that champion. We had a creative director, but that creative director, in my opinion, wasn't empowered to be that champion of the essence of the game, because this person was second guessed too much by like executives, by folks that may have been higher up. So anyway, I really like, Willem, what you and Rick have been saying about the key components of the Magic, and unfortunately, the team or the project that I worked on, it did not have any of those elements.
That's such a good story and such a valuable one for everybody to hear. Here's my immediate question. So I'll respond a little bit to what you said. I think it's all really good knowledge. I love the fact that it's so cut and dry. We just didn't have those things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So we didn't have clear vision. We didn't have good team morale, aka confidence. We didn't have good team chemistry. And we didn't have like the enthusiasm and the momentum. I have also been on projects like that, and surprise, surprise, the project didn't ship or did poorly. But here's what I'm curious about. This is something that I am now trying to play with, because my own career is shorter than yours, RJ. It's really cool. I love running this podcast because I get to talk to cool people like you. Yeah, when we run into projects like this, when we are on a team and we're like, shit, I don't think it has the magic. What do we do as individual contributors here, not as leadership? Do we immediately start looking for other jobs and try to jump ship? Do we try to instill the magic? Like, do we just learn and accept maybe this game is going to suck? Like, what do we do?
That's very, very tough. Excellent question, but very tough. Although you said specifically, what can we as individual contributors do? Not so much as a leadership standpoint. I honestly think that it's very important that like the overall culture of the team, which and the way that the culture is defined starts with leadership, whether it be studio management, the creative directors, art directors, so on and so forth. Like leadership needs to like define a culture that is conducive, that's healthy to the whole creative the creative process, the game making process. More to the point of your question. In addition to what Willem and Rick have been talking about, there's one other thing that actually I think one of you mentioned this, but I want to home in on this or focus on this even more. I think it's incredibly important. It's crucial that any game team, small, big, in between, the culture should have the team should have a culture of open and honest communication. So I think that starts with leadership, but it should go like the entire team should feel confident that even if it's the newest member of the team can talk to the studio head, or like the newest designer should be able to have an open and honest communication with the creative director. There shouldn't be like any sense of intimidation. There shouldn't be any sense of, oh, I'm new to this, I don't feel qualified to share my opinion, because that's something else that we lacked in this mystery project that I like. Again, I don't want to get in trouble, I don't want to say any names. So just to give you an example, obviously every single team, big or small, every member should play the game for playtesting. So not only for the job, but just to it helps with team building, and it also helps get internal feedback. So we played this game, we play tested this game pretty much every week, or at least every other week for years. But the feedback sessions that followed each playtest session, in my opinion, they weren't really honest. It was all like focusing on little things. It's like, oh, you know what? Maybe if we tweak this, it'll be a bit more fun. Or, oh, like, hey, the art is really improving. That's great. But like, and forgive me for cursing, but every time that I play test the game, and I'm guilty of this too, I wasn't honest, because like if I were honest, I would have just written down, this game is not fucking fun. Like, we've been playing this turd for years, and I've never had fun playing it.
You're
and
giving me PTSD flashbacks here, RJ.
Yeah. You see, and that's the thing. It's like, and again, I imagine this is a prevalent issue where teams of all sizes from everywhere, they don't have that culture of honest and open communication. So people are probably, and I was like this, I was scared to, and I wouldn't have cursed, I wouldn't have been unprofessional about it, but I probably should have spoken my mind a little bit more and said,
yeah,
you know what, folks, we've been playing this, and we've been working on this for a couple of years, probably 5 years total, and there's just no spark. It's just not fun. Like, it's a chore for me to playtest every other week. But obviously we should be, as the folks making this game, we should be excited. It's like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, we're playing our game. We know it's gonna be awesome, even though we're in pre-production, or even though it's still early on. Just the prototype is really fun. But anyway, like the point I'm trying to make is that just that culture of open and honest communication with no fear of, being yelled at, no fear of pissing off the creative director, the studio head, or whatever.
Yep.
That open and honest communication is paramount.
Yeah, 110,000% agree with that. And I think there's sort of two sides of any of these cultural answers, where as a leader, it's a hell of a lot easier to create an open and honest communication. But even as an individual contributor, even if you're just a designer or just an engineer on the team, and I don't mean to diminish those roles, they're very important. We love you. You can still help create the culture. So oftentimes, even if it might make you a little unpopular, which this is why it's scary, and this is why a lot of people don't do it. Even if it's a little unpopular, oftentimes it's not going to get you fired to be like, hey, this is not fun, and that's a problem. And oftentimes that actually will generally result in good things for you. Oftentimes people will respect you for being willing to say something like that on a team. So this is just a little mini rant to suggest that no matter who you are on your team, do your best to build up the courage to start having open and honest dialogue, because it takes one person to start having that open and honest dialogue to affect cultural change, even if you aren't a leader on the team. I'm going to have you, I would love your opinion, RJ, on one question here from Surya, because I think it's a good one, and I think especially for those indie or practice projects, we always run into this. So I'm curious if you've got thoughts on it. So here's the question. What are your strategies for keeping the magic alive during the dreaded swamp phase of production, when you're well past the romance of the initial idea, that oh-so-sweet honeymoon phase, but still far from release?
Again, you're lobbing all these really tough questions for me that I have to answer in just a matter of seconds. But I'm going to answer this as someone who I don't think I've personally ever successfully done this myself, but I've seen and I've worked with people who did this. So going back to, and I mentioned this earlier, like you need someone, chances are it's going to be the creative director, or it's going to be somebody else like high up in the creative discipline, or maybe the studio head, but someone who's a champion of the project. So if you do get into that phase where, you've been working on this project for many, many months, if not many years, and that everyone in the team is invested in the core game, in the essence, or that magic, but you've just been working on it for so long that you can tell that morale's dipping a little bit, people are just getting tired, maybe people are getting a little bit burned out. But if you have that champion, like that person that everybody trusts, that person that everyone recognizes as this person, like truly believes in not only the team but the project, and then again that spark or that essence of the project, like that motivator, that champion who's able to talk and motivate the whole team to, hey, everybody, remember, these are the pillars that we're working toward, and like the last time we had a playtest, which was just like last week, remember how much fun we were having. So even though we've got 6 more months, or even though we've got like 1 more year of it's pure, like, I don't know, like you're working entirely in art, you're working entirely on content, like the key game features are done, but now it's the content push. So even though we all know we have at least 1 more year before we're in a launchable state, just remember how much fun we had, not only last week, but every single time we have a playtest. Like, our game is fun. All of you know the game is fun. We just need to hunker down and just focus on 1 more year of this content push. Focus on, like, the end goal, because it's not going to go on forever. We have just 1 more year, or whatever that roadmap is. But let's say we just have that 1 more year to get to the goal line, and then all this work will be worth it. And then the world, or like players, not just us, will see what we've known for all this time, that we're working on, or we're building something that's really fun, that's magical, and then we'll share that magic once we get to the end goal. So just focus on that. But like, so that's a very easy answer, but obviously, like with so many easy answers, it's incredibly difficult to actually execute. You need that champion. You need that person who truly believes in the project and is also persuasive enough and has like those leadership or those those personality traits that can so not only are they pumped up, not only are they passionate, but they can get the entire team to feel passionate as well.
That was such a good answer. I think I'm gonna take a couple clips from that, maybe get them tattooed up my leg, something like that, some way I don't forget it. Beautiful answer, RJ.
All right.
Thank you.
First time anyone's ever said they're going to tattoo something that I've said on their body. So I guess I'll take that as a compliment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think to call out some parts of that, I think having the champion is huge, and being that champion is hard. And oftentimes the champion, Rick is mentioning in the comments here, sort of needs some level of authority to really be able to be the champion. They need to be able to say, nope, not that idea, or yes, that's perfect. But the one thing I want to echo, since so many of our listeners here are those indie devs or those smaller teams are working on practice projects, if you don't have a champion, I'm going to echo the exact same thing we said earlier, where you can, at least to some degree, become the champion no matter who you are on the team. So even if you aren't the creative director, you can start to basically take authority, or responsibility, maybe is the better word, take responsibility for creating belief on the team. And don't do that disingenuously. Don't lie. Don't be like, man, this game sucks, but I'm going to tell everybody it's awesome. Be sort of pragmatic about it. That's really the best way to do it. But you can absolutely at least be a sub-champion, maybe, for your project, even if you aren't in some vaulted position.
Agreed.
All right. So we're coming to the end of the episode already. This went so fast. Man, I love these community episodes. We really have to do these more often. But I have Cheru up on stage, or Rachel. Rachel has worked on a number of solo projects and had some thoughts on what the magic looks like in a solo project. Rachel, you want to do a little intro to yourself and then tell us what that looks like?
Sure. I'm probably a quintessential IGA community member. I'm, in the midst of aspirational career change. 2024 is like the year I decided, okay, I like games enough. I want to do this for a living at some point. So I guess I'll work towards that. So I've gone through a couple of the level ones. I was in cohort 14 and then just recently 18, which is really great. I've taken a couple of narrative design classes and most recently this master class, which is where the magic appeared to me. We had a solo project that we had to do. Well, all the projects were solo projects for the most part, but one of them was we had to write a Twine project in about a week. And we had certain design constraints that we were supposed to meet. We had like a creative brief that we were following. And then we met every week as like a co-working session to sort of talk through issues we might still be having. I was done by the time I went to the co-working session that week. And then after being in that session, I was like, oh, my project is terrible. It doesn't meet any of the requirements. I need to start over entirely. And now I had like a day to remake this project, to rewrite the whole thing and come up with these branches, because I had to have like 2 to 3 branching pathways in it. So it was a whole lot of things I was supposed to be learning all at once. Mm-hmm. And so I brainstormed for about an hour, pretty like rapidly and furiously and in a fit of terror. But what I had from my first draft was a branch that I hadn't used, that I was like, this one is too weird. I can't incorporate this into the idea. The whole idea was that you're supposed to have a character who desperately wants a glass of water and they think they might die in 5 minutes if they don't. And there's another character, it's this like snooty French waiter who doesn't want to give it to them. And your whole point is to try and get them through that challenge. Well, I had an idea where there was like like a lamp or like a bottle full of water in a bathroom that they snuck into. And I was like, oh, what if that was like a genie's lamp and they just like drank all the water out of some genie's lamp? That's such a weird idea. But that's what the whole second version became, was the fact that the waiter was a genie and that the main character has somehow encountered their lamp, and now the waiter is trying to get them water while not letting them get the water they don't want them to have. And I was like, okay, this is very weird. But this is also very me. And I love this idea so much that it was easy to just sort of rewrite the whole thing. And so what I learned was sort of some creative honesty with myself, that I had dismissed this idea because I thought, well, people are going to read this and they're going to think this is a really strange, weird idea. That like, how did they even come up with it? And I was like, well, of course they're going to think it's weird. I came up with it. It's a me idea. And when I had like my partner read it and when I had my classmates read it, they're like, oh, I never would have thought of that. My partner's like, he's like, this is totally you. This is absolutely something you would come up with. And I was like, oh, that's what I want. I want this to feel like it's an honest and sort of authentic expression of my voice as a writer, because that's the whole point of this experience and this whole learning process. So yeah, the experience there was like, lean into the weird. You know, if I think something seems too weird, maybe that's the direction I should be going, more so than like trying to fit myself into a box of being more approachable creatively. Especially when I'm working by myself. You know, I'm not beholden to a team.
Even when you are working with a team, I actually really love that as maybe a final part of the magic, because you're bringing up something that we haven't quite touched upon, which is what I would probably call authenticity. When we work on projects that more closely touch our heart, they matter to us a lot more. And as a result, we generally make much better contributions to those projects. At Mod Collective right now, which is my most recent job, which is super cool. I'm working in the professional modding space for the first time in my life. We were originally going to be building mods for The Sims, which like totally would have been cool. Love me some Sims. But because Baldur's Gate 3 just released patch 7, where there are now modding tools, we're all super pumped and are switching over to Baldur's Gate 3. I fucking love Baldur's Gate 3. To use a little inspiration from RJ there, it is one of my favorite games of all time, and it is such an incredible accomplishment. And the team in particular, the people who made Baldur's Gate 3, are some of my favorite people on the planet. They inspire me, and I learn so much from them and what they do. So as a result, I am so much more amped, and I'm working probably more than I should be to create just a wonderful Baldur's Gate 3 mod, simply because it's a little bit more authentic. It's closer to my heart. It's closer to what I care about.
Yeah, I think it's really important to just, like, you can't fake that kind of enthusiasm. When something like really just grabs you and hooks you, that is magic. When you realize, oh, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
where you like for all of us as games.
Yeah, I agree. Where you get to put a little bit of your soul into the project.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so it is the end of the episode, but before we go, I'm going to ask each of the guests we've talked here today one question. It's going to be the same question for all three of you, and we're going to go one at a time. Rick, in your opinion, what is the one thing, or what is a one thing that you'd recommend to an indie team to create more magic on their project? I'm putting Rick on the spot. Everybody else has a chance to think about it.
Yeah. But before you get started in production, like when you're talking about it, if you cannot see that clear gameplay experience in your head, like a slideshow of the player experience, then you're going to have a very difficult time getting started with it, and you should keep ideating until you can clearly see that vision. Or at least one person to be your champion can see that vision.
I love that. Awesome. Yeah, so clear vision with clear playable moments. How does the game actually play before you ever start? All right,
that's how
RJ.
you align everybody towards like building the same thing.
100% agree. All right, RJ, what is one thing that you recommend indie teams do to get more magic on their projects?
Well, first off, thanks for starting with Rick, because I'm basically stealing an idea that Rick talked about earlier. But I'm a huge proponent of prototypes. So prototype. And I could rant about this, so I'll try not to rant about it. But I honestly think that a lot of failed projects, especially in the AAA side, because of course AAA takes years, but I think that a lot of failed projects, whether they're big or small, failed because not enough time was spent in prototyping, not enough time was spent in ideation and pre-production and those early stages. I think that a lot of people, a lot of teams rather, they kind of get ahead of themselves and they rush into production. It's like, yeah, we spent like 1 week prototyping. That's enough. We think that this is kind of fun. Now we're just going to spend the next 1 to 6 years or whatever, like investing in a project that did not find that fun during the prototype phase. So, and again, I'll try not to rant about this, but I think prototyping is, I'm of the opinion that prototyping is the most essential step of the entire game development process. Everything's important, of course. Every stage, every phase, whatever you want to call it, everything's important. But it all starts in many different ways. It all starts with prototyping. So anyway, repeating something that Rick said earlier, it's like ideally you can find that magic. Like Rick said 2 weeks, but you can find it pretty fast with prototyping. If you're prototyping something, you're using programmer art, you're using placeholder art, the environments are all gray box. It looks ugly as shit. But the prototype, you find that nugget of magic. It's like, wow, I'm just jumping around with my gray box characters, but something about this is fun. So anyway, like I said, I can rant about this for hours, but I'm not finding that magic starting with prototyping and not rushing through prototyping. I think that's key because like I said, I'm a huge believer in prototyping. Is probably, out of all the important stages of game development, prototyping and finding that little nugget of fun, that spark of magic starts with the prototype phase. So don't rush past it.
I love that. That's such a good answer. In our biggest program, our 4-month-long program at IGA, we use something we call the concept validation funnel, which is basically just like a funnel of taking all of your ideas and choosing just one game to make. And something I added to the funnel recently-ish was just arrows that go back up the funnel, and those arrows get activated if you don't fully authentically believe that you have a home run game. Games take so much time to make. Like even the shortest games are 6 months, a year, multiple years of your life. Those are for the small games. AAA games, 4 to 7 years. And so it is not even close to worth working on a game that you just think is pretty good. It needs to be you going, holy shit, I think I found the holy grail, before you actually commit to working on a project. And so, yes, I think prototyping is huge. And I think burning the midnight oil prototyping until you're like, oh my God, I think we have something magic, I think is a fantastic call out. All right. Rachel, what do you believe is one thing that indie teams can do to add more magic to their projects?
Oh boy. I feel like I'm on a stage with giants right now. Okay, I think as individual contributors, it's kind of important for you to all be sort of like in your vertical as much as possible. And so if you can find the thing that is like your piece of the North Star that you're most excited about, and if you can keep reminding yourself that like this is like the part I'm going to sub-champion within the larger concept, and stay excited about your piece as much as possible, and finding out what it is about this concept you're the most excited by, so that you can keep intrinsically motivating yourself to really devote your attention to that over the scope of the however long your development cycle is. Like, I think that might be a big contributor.
Yeah. I love that, Rachel. And absolutely, you're on stage as somebody perhaps with few less years in the industry, but as a result, you have a unique perspective that's really valuable. And I think what you've just given is a piece that we may not have even called out. As an individual contributor on a project who's perhaps not making the giant decisions, having that little piece of authenticity and that little piece of excitement, enthusiasm, here's the dream, here's the way I can contribute in a way that is going to be awesome and that I'm excited for, I think is huge. And that's a big part of how you, as an individual contributor, can lead to greater magic on the team stage, on the whole stage. So that's super cool, Rachel. Thank you for that.
Oh gosh,
all right.
I'm so glad. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Heck yeah. All right. So we are going to wrap up the episode. I'm going to give what I believe are 5 secrets to magic now that we've all talked. So here's what I think they are. They are... Wait, I wrote the same thing twice. That's not right. Here they are. Our 5 secrets to creating magic on your teams. They are: number 1, momentum. Building up that momentum over time on your team helps create a sense of trust and helps people get excited about the project. You'll also notice when momentum starts to wane, and then you can build momentum back up and bring the team back into it. Number 2 is morale. Is your team excited and confident about the project that you're actually building? Number 3 is clear vision. Does your team know what the heck they are even building? And does everybody have generally the same idea of what is getting built? Number 4 is team chemistry. Are people just excited to hang out? Are these the kind of folks you might text at 1 a.m. because you saw a funny meme? And number 5 is authenticity. Is there a part of this project that you can directly relate to and are excited to contribute to? Those are what I believe to be the 5 aspects of creating magic on your team. Now, here in the Indie Game Lunch Hour, we love to give a little bit of homework. So what I would like to do for everybody who's listening is to assign a pretty simple homework assignment. I want you to pick a game that you have already worked on, or if you have not yet worked on a game, go do a game jam. But if you haven't done that, pick a game that you know something of. So pick a game that you just enjoy playing or something, and do the same exercise for. Pick a game that you've worked on in the past or one that you just love, and write a little bit about what you believe contributed to the magic on that project. If there wasn't much magic, that's okay. You can talk about that. If there was a ton of magic, great, talk about that. Pick an aspect of it that you believe did have the magic, and write a little bit about what you believe created that magic. All right, so identify a project you've worked on, or at least another game, and what you believe is the magic of that game. Put that up on LinkedIn for us. You can tag the Indie Game Academy or myself, Willem Daventhal, or RJ Reyes, or Rachel, or Rick, and get some perspectives into the magic of game jams. That's going to be it. It is now the end of the episode. We'll be back here Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern time for the next episode. And until then, we love you. Thanks for coming. Thank you, everybody who got on stage and answered some questions. And as always, heck yeah, thank you, RJ. And as always, if you enjoyed the episode, who is one other person who may also enjoy it that you can send this along to? All right. Goodbye, everybody. Have a wonderful day.